I'm 22, and up until last week I thought I had my whole life set on a predictable track. I was living with my boyfriend of 3 years, finishing my last year of college, and saving for the tiny engagement ring I thought he'd eventually buy me. But everything came crashing down the moment I found out a secret about my family that I can't seem to wrap my head around. My dad has always been this quiet, dependable guy, works hard, doesn't talk much, and was the one person I thought would never betray anyone. My parents have been married for almost 30 years, and although they aren't overly affectionate, I always assumed they were just one of those couples who settled into comfort instead of fireworks. But then, 3 nights ago, my older cousin drunkenly let something slip at a family barbecue. She mentioned that I shouldn't be surprised if things blew up soon because secrets can't stay hidden forever. At first, I thought she was talking about herself, maybe some drama with her boyfriend. But then she turned to me, gave this awkward smile, and said, "Ask your mom about Aunt Claire." For context, Claire isn't really my aunt. She's my mom's childhood best friend. I grew up with her around constantly. She's at every birthday, every holiday, every family dinner. I've always called her Aunt Claire without thinking twice about it. She's practically family, but apparently she might be more than that. When I pressed my cousin later, she refused to say more. Just shook her head and told me to talk to my parents. I didn't sleep that night. My stomach was in knots. I couldn't figure out what the connection was supposed to be. Was my mom hiding something? Was Claire hiding something? The next morning, I confronted my mom. I expected her to laugh it off, tell me my cousin was being dramatic, but instead her whole face changed. She froze, went pale, and then told me to never bring it up again. No explanation, no denial, just a warning. That reaction only made me spiral further, because now I can't stop thinking about the one thing I've always ignored. How Claire has always been closer to my dad than to my mom. How she and my dad share inside jokes. How sometimes when she hugs me goodbye, her eyes flick toward him like she's saying goodbye to him too. And the worst part? Claire has a daughter, one just 2 years older than me, and now I can't stop wondering if that girl is actually my half-sister. After my mom's reaction, I couldn't focus on anything else. I kept replaying her face in my head, the way her lips trembled before she told me to never bring it up again. That wasn't denial, that was fear. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I went digging. I started with social media, scrolling through years of photos from Claire's page, and that's when it hit me. Her daughter, Megan, who I've known my whole life, looks eerily like my dad. Same hazel eyes, same stubborn chin, even the same crooked smile he gets when he's pretending to be serious. I've never noticed it before because why would I? But once the thought crossed my mind, I couldn't unsee it. I felt sick. Later that day, I decided to test the waters with Megan. I messaged her casually, asking if she ever wondered why our families were so close, or if she'd ever heard any rumors. She read the message but didn't reply. Hours later, she finally sent a single line, "You really don't want to go down that road." That response gutted me. What did that even mean? Was she confirming it without saying it out loud? Or was she just protecting her mom? That night, I couldn't sleep again. My boyfriend asked what was wrong, but I couldn't even bring myself to tell him. It felt too big, too messy. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, until I finally grabbed my phone and scrolled through my dad's Facebook. And there it was, hidden in plain sight. Back when I was about 7, there was this photo of my dad holding me on his shoulders at a park. Right next to us, Claire and Megan. My mom wasn't even in the shot. The caption read, "My favorite people in the world." Not our favorite people. Not family. His. My chest tightened, and I swear my hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. Because suddenly, I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I felt like an outsider in my own family, and the worst part? I realized my cousin must have known about this for years, which meant other people in my family probably knew too. Everyone except me. I couldn't take the silence anymore. Megan's cryptic message haunted me all day, and by the next afternoon I drove straight to her apartment without telling anyone. I didn't even know what I was going to say, but I knew I couldn't keep spinning in circles. When she opened the door, her face fell like she'd been expecting this. She let me in without a word, and the air between us was thick with tension. I sat down on her couch, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. I finally blurted out the question that had been clawing at me since the barbecue. "Is my dad your dad too?" Her expression gave me the answer before her mouth did. She didn't look shocked or confused, just tired. Then she whispered, "I'm not supposed to tell you." It was like the floor dropped out beneath me. I pushed harder, demanding the truth, and Megan finally cracked. She told me she found out 2 years ago after overhearing Claire and my mom arguing. According to her, my dad had an affair with Claire back when Megan was born. My mom found out, but instead of blowing up the marriage, she made some sort of arrangement with Claire. No one outside the family was ever supposed to know. I just sat there, numb. My dad wasn't the quiet, dependable man I thought he was. He was the reason our family friend had been glued to us my whole life. Megan wasn't just like family. She actually was family. The craziest part? Megan admitted she always suspected something too. She said she used to joke with her friends that she looked nothing like her mom's side of the family, and they'd tease her about being the milkman's kid. She said she never thought it was true until she noticed how much she resembled my dad as she got older. Hearing her say it out loud made everything real in a way I wasn't ready for. I left her apartment in a daze. I sat in my car for nearly an hour before I could even turn the ignition. All I could think about was my mom, how she's lived with this secret for decades. But what ate at me most was the question I couldn't shake. If my mom knew and kept it quiet, what else had she been hiding from me? By the time I got home that night, I was trembling with anger and confusion. I walked straight past my boyfriend without a word, locked myself in my room, and just sat there staring at the floor. I kept hearing Megan's voice in my head. "I'm not supposed to tell you." I couldn't hold it in anymore. The next morning, I cornered my mom in the kitchen before she left for work. My voice was shaking, but I forced the words out. "I know about Dad and Claire. I know Megan is his daughter." She froze, her keys clattering onto the counter. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try. She just stared at me like a woman caught in a trap. Finally, she sat down, buried her face in her hands, and admitted everything. She said she found out about the affair right after Megan was born, almost 24 years ago. At first, she wanted to divorce my dad, but she was terrified of raising me alone. My dad swore it was a mistake, begged her to stay, and promised he'd cut Claire off. But Claire refused to go quietly. She wanted my dad in Megan's life, even if it was in secret. And here's the part that made my stomach twist. My mom agreed. She told me she figured it was better to keep Claire close, to control the situation, than to let it spiral into scandal. So that's why Claire was always around. Birthdays, holidays, family vacations. My mom said it was the only way to make sure my dad didn't sneak off behind her back. But then she admitted something even worse. At one point, when I was still little, my dad actually tried to leave us for Claire. He packed a bag, said he was done hiding. My mom said she stood in the doorway with me on her hip and told him if he walked out, he'd never see either of us again. That was the night he stayed, and chose his family. Except he didn't, really. He chose to keep us all tangled together in this web of lies. My chest felt like it was caving in. My entire childhood suddenly looked different. Every holiday photo, every barbecue, every family dinner with Claire at the table. It wasn't friendship. It was a constant reminder of betrayal. And the worst part was realizing my mom knew all along, and she kept smiling through it. She built our entire family on a secret I wasn't supposed to find out. When I asked why she never told me, she just said, "Because I wanted you to have a father you could respect." I couldn't even look at her. I walked out of the house, got in my car, and drove aimlessly for hours. And the whole time, one thought burned in my mind. If my dad betrayed her once and almost left, how do I know it ever really stopped? After my mom's confession, I felt like I was living in someone else's life. Every memory I had of childhood felt tainted. My dad carrying me on his shoulders at the park. My mom smiling while Claire passed the mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving. The little jokes they all shared. It all felt staged now. Like I had been part of a performance I didn't even know was happening. But the more I thought about it, the less convinced I was that it had all ended decades ago. If my dad had already proven he could betray my mom once, what was stopping him from doing it again? So, I started paying attention. At first, it was little things. I noticed how often he went for drives in the evenings. He'd say he needed air, but sometimes he wouldn't come back for hours. My mom never questioned it. She just sat there, sipping her tea like it was normal. Then there was his phone. My dad has always been old school, barely knowing how to text, yet suddenly he was glued to it at night. He'd tilt the screen away whenever I walked past. One night, when he fell asleep on the couch, I crept over to peek, but he had set up a lock screen password, a new habit. And then came the moment that shook me. Last Thursday, he said he was working late. My mom seemed unfazed, but I decided to follow him. I parked a couple of streets away from his office and waited. Sure enough, he never went inside. Instead, I watched from my car as he pulled into a quiet restaurant on the edge of town. My stomach churned as I saw who walked in 10 minutes later. Claire. I felt like I couldn't breathe. She looked comfortable, casual, like this wasn't new. And when my dad spotted her, he stood up from the booth and hugged her. Too long, too familiar. I didn't stay. I couldn't. I drove away before I saw anything else, gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands went numb. But the image of them together, laughing in a booth like a couple on a date, won't leave my head. Now I'm stuck between rage and dread. Was my mom right all along to keep her close? Or has my dad been lying to both of us this entire time? For 2 days I carried the image of them in that booth like a weight pressing on my chest. I kept picturing my dad's smile, the way he leaned in, how comfortable Claire looked. It wasn't some awkward meeting of two people with a messy past. It was familiar, easy, like it had never ended. I wanted to storm into the kitchen, slam my hands on the table, and tell my mom exactly what I saw. But every time I tried to imagine it, something stopped me. Her face when she confessed before, tired, defeated, like she had already carried the truth for decades. Would telling her even change anything? Or would it just pile more hurt onto her shoulders? Finally, last night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked her if she ever wondered what Dad did on those nights he came home late. I tried to sound casual, but my voice cracked halfway through. She looked at me for a long time, then sighed and set her cup down. That's when she said the words that nearly knocked the air out of me. I already know. I froze. My whole body went cold. She went on to explain that she's known for years that my dad never really let Claire go. She said she'd catch him sneaking out, or notice the way his shirt smelled faintly of her perfume, or find his car parked near her street. At first she confronted him, but over time, she just stopped. She told me she made her peace with it, that it was better to live with the devil you know than destroy the life she built. Hearing that broke me in a way I didn't expect. My mom has been silently living this way for decades, watching my dad choose another woman over and over, and she just swallowed it. For me, for our family. She reached over and squeezed my hand, whispering that I shouldn't get involved. She said some battles weren't worth fighting, and that sometimes, knowing the truth doesn't mean you need to do anything about it. But I couldn't stop thinking about the hug I saw, the way my dad looked at Claire. My mom might be able to bury it, but I can't. And now, for the first time in my life, I'm starting to wonder if I even want him as part of my life at all. I couldn't take it anymore. Watching my mom sink into quiet acceptance, while my dad went on pretending nothing was wrong, it was eating me alive. I decided I had to confront him myself, even if it meant blowing everything wide open. So last Sunday, I waited until my mom was out grocery shopping. My dad was sitting in the living room, scrolling on his phone, looking calm and ordinary, like the kind of man who didn't have decades of secrets buried under his skin. I sat across from him, my heart pounding, and just said it. I saw you with Claire. The words hung in the air like a grenade. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look surprised. Instead, he set his phone down slowly and leaned back, almost like he'd been waiting for this moment. His first words? I figured you'd find out eventually. That's when he told me everything, or at least his version of everything. According to him, he and Claire never stopped seeing each other. Not once in 24 years. He admitted that Megan is his daughter, that my mom knows, and that the reason Claire has always been family is because she is. He swore he never planned to hurt me, that he stayed in the marriage because he wanted me to grow up with both parents under one roof. He said he thought he was protecting me, but then came the part that made my stomach twist. He told me he's tired of hiding, that now that I'm an adult, he doesn't see a reason to keep pretending anymore. He said he's thinking about leaving my mom, for real this time, and starting fresh with Claire. I couldn't believe the audacity. He sat there telling me all this like he was proud, like I'd somehow understand, like I'd just nod and accept that my entire childhood was built on a lie so he could play house with two families at once. I didn't even let him finish. I stood up, shaking, and told him I wanted nothing to do with his secret life, that if he left my mom for Claire, he'd be leaving me too. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face, and in that moment I realized maybe he doesn't care about Claire as much as he claims. Maybe he cares more about keeping up the image of a father I can respect, but the image is already shattered. After that confrontation, I couldn't stop replaying his words in my head. I never stopped seeing her. Megan is my daughter. I might leave your mom. It was like my whole life cracked down the middle. I knew I had to talk to Megan again. She deserved to know what he told me. Or maybe I just needed to hear her version one more time to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. So I texted her, asked if we could meet. She agreed right away, which surprised me. We sat in her car outside a coffee shop, both too paranoid to go inside, and I told her everything my dad had admitted. She didn't look shocked. She just stared at the steering wheel, her jaw tight. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. He told me the same thing last year. I blinked, not sure I heard her right. She went on to explain that a few months after she found out he was her dad, he started meeting her privately. At first it was awkward, but then he became invested. He'd take her to dinner, talk about wanting to be in her life more, even hinted at wanting the three of us, me, her, and him, to start building some kind of real family. But here's the kicker. He swore to her that my mom didn't know. That's when everything snapped into place. My mom told me she knew. My dad told me she knew. But to Megan, he spun a whole different story. That she was a secret. That my mom had no clue. That one day he'd come clean. So now I'm stuck wondering, has he been lying to all of us in different ways? Has he been keeping control by telling each person just enough to keep them quiet? Megan looked at me with tears in her eyes and admitted she doesn't know what to believe anymore. She said she's tired of being the hidden one, the afterthought, the side project he sneaks off to visit. She said sometimes she wishes he'd just pick a side already, even if it meant losing him forever. Her words hit me hard, because they mirrored exactly how I felt. For the first time, I realized we weren't on opposite sides at all. We were both victims of the same man's selfishness. And when she finally turned to me and whispered, "There's something else you don't know," I felt the air catch in my throat. She said Claire has been talking about moving away, far away, and not just with Megan. She's been hinting about taking my dad with her. I couldn't get Megan's words out of my head. Claire's talking about moving, taking him with her. It sounded like the kind of idle threat people make when they're frustrated, but Megan swore it wasn't. She said Claire had already been researching jobs in another state, even looking at houses online. She'd overheard phone calls late at night, and every time my dad came around, Claire pushed harder for him to finally leave. I needed proof. So a few nights later, I drove past Claire's place. My dad's truck was there, parked a few houses down like he thought no one would notice. My heart thudded in my ears as I sat in the dark, watching. After about an hour, I saw them step out together. They looked happy, relaxed, like they were already practicing a new life. And then my dad opened the back of his truck, and I saw it. 2 suitcases. That image will haunt me forever. It wasn't just sneaking around anymore. It wasn't just stolen dinners or secret hugs. It was planning, preparing. I drove home shaking, barely able to see the road through the blur in my eyes. When I got inside, my mom was sitting in her robe, sipping tea, calm as ever. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her he was packing bags with Claire like their life together didn't exist, but the exhaustion on her face stopped me. Instead, I went upstairs and locked myself in my room, staring at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, I checked Megan's social media out of habit, and that's when I found the last piece of the puzzle. A private post meant only for her close friends, but someone had screenshotted it and sent it to me anonymously. It was a picture of Claire in front of a house with a big "for sale" sign. The caption read, "Fresh start coming soon. Can't wait." And there, half hidden in the reflection of the window behind her, was my dad. When I saw that reflection of my dad standing behind Claire, it was like my entire world collapsed in on itself. There was no more guessing, no more doubting, no more, maybe I misunderstood. He wasn't just sneaking around anymore. He was already halfway gone. I sat on my bed for hours staring at that photo. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. Part of me wanted to send it straight to my mom, to rip the blindfold off once and for all. But then I thought about the way she looked when she admitted she had known for decades. Tired, defeated, like she'd been carrying this weight long before I even existed. Would showing her proof really help her? Or would it just be the final blow she'd spent 30 years trying to avoid? That night, I made my decision. I walked into the kitchen while my mom was folding laundry and slid my phone across the table. She looked down, saw the photo, and her hands froze. She didn't say a word, just stared at the screen until her eyes filled with tears. Finally, she whispered, "So, he's really leaving this time." I didn't know what to say. I expected rage, maybe heartbreak, maybe denial. But instead, she just nodded, wiped her face, and said, "Then let him go." It was like she had already made peace with it years ago, and now she was just waiting for the moment he actually walked out. 2 days later, he did. He didn't make a big scene, didn't fight, didn't even try to explain. He just packed a bag, told my mom he was sorry, and drove off. No goodbye to me. No goodbye to the family he'd pretended to hold together for so long. And the strangest part? My mom didn't cry. She just sat down at the table, poured herself another cup of tea, and said, "Now we can finally breathe." It's been a week, and I still don't know how to feel. Angry, relieved, betrayed, all of it at once. Megan texts me sometimes, but I can't bring myself to answer. I don't hate her. It's not her fault. But she's the reminder of everything my dad destroyed. I guess what I keep circling back to is this. Maybe my mom was right all along. Maybe knowing the truth doesn't always mean fixing it. Sometimes it just means living with it until the choice is finally taken out of your hands. Now it's just me and her in this house. And even though it feels emptier, somehow, it also feels lighter. But deep down, I can't stop asking myself, was our family ever real? Or was it just a carefully constructed lie that finally cracked open?